Hi you guys, and welcome to Vlogmas Day 8. So today's video is going to be another story time, and this is going to be the story time about how I almost died. Literally, I almost died, not clickbait. So yeah, I'm gonna just get right into the story time. So basically, the summer going into my sophomore year, okay, let me start over. Okay, so TMI, but I've always had ingrown toenails. And they just kept getting infected, but I was going to the nail shop and they were like cutting them out, and that seemed to help a little bit, but then they kept getting infected, so I kept having to go back to the doctor and getting like antibiotics and stuff to treat the infection. So this one time I went, the doctor gave me Bactrim, which is an antibiotic. And he told me, like, this is a really strong antibiotic. Like, you're going to need a lot of food on your stomach. You know, it may make you feel, you know, like crap. So, you know, just keep that in mind. So I took the first dose, and then later on that night, I was kind of telling my mom, like, hey, you know, I don't feel good. You know, like, I'm really nauseous. And she was like, okay, well, we'll skip the dose for tonight, and then you'll take the dose in the morning if you feel better. So I woke up that next morning, and I felt better. So I took the second dose. And then me and my mom were watching Best Man's Holiday, I think. And it was the part where his wife died. And my mom was like, oh, you're such a wuss, you're crying. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not crying. And she was like, yes, you are, like your eyes. And you guys, I kid you not, my eyes were like, if you can imagine a Coke can, like that's how red my eyes were. And my mom was like, oh, okay, she thought it was my allergy, so she was like, you know, take some Claritin and some Sudafed or whatever. And I'm just like, okay. And then later on, I'm like, you know, I'm really starting to get like a really bad headache. And my mom was like, okay, maybe your allergies, because this was in the summertime. So she was like, okay, take some Excedrin migraine, whatever. And then that night, I did take the second dose of the antibiotics. I woke up the next morning and my mom was at work, and I remember texting her like, I really do not feel good. Like, mind you guys, this was a week before classes started, because this was on a Monday. I remember because my dad's off on Mondays, and this was a week before classes started. So I remember just waking up texting my mom like, I really do not feel good. And for whatever reason, I went in my dad's room and he thought to take my temperature, and my temperature was 105.7. So he called my mom and he told her, and my mom was like, okay, well, you need to get her to the immediate care. At this point, like, it was really hard for me to stand up, and my dad was like, okay, well, we need to get your fever down, and you also need to take a shower. So he basically like threw me into the cold shower to get my fever down, plus I needed to take a shower. But it was really hard for me to stand up, and I'm just like, okay, I just need to take a shower and I need to get out of here. So we go to the immediate care, and the lights were hurting my eyes. It was really hard for me to stand up. And so they were giving me like ibuprofen and stuff, and you know, they were asking me about everything, like what did I take, and I told them. And so she comes back, which my mom had worked at that immediate care before, so I knew the doctor, they all knew me, and they knew everything that I was allergic to and all of that stuff. So she came back and she told my dad, she was like, I think I know what it is, but I've never seen it before. And I'm just like, okay. And she was like, if it's what I think it is, then we need to get her to the hospital right now. And I'm just like, oh, you got to be kidding me. So she was like, okay, I just called the hospital, the nearest hospital, and they're expecting you. Like, you guys need to go now. So my dad drove me to the hospital, and at this point, my mom was leaving work, and she was all the way in Chicago. And so my mom was on her way, so they got me into the room, and they started hooking me up to machines. At this point, my skin started like sloughing off. Like, if you can imagine what a snake looks like when it sheds its skin, that's what my skin started doing. My skin literally was like falling off, like onto the floor. And they're like, okay, we have an idea of what this is, but we've never seen it before. Like, this is very rare. We really only learned about it in school, and we've seen it in textbooks. And they were like, so we basically need to get this antibiotic out of your system because you're having an allergic reaction. And I'm like, okay. So they're like, okay, they hooked me up to IVs, like fluids, and then another one was Benadryl. But my mom at this point was there. My mom was like, you know, Benadryl's not going to work because if you guys don't know, I'm allergic to damn near everything. I've been taking Benadryl since I was like 3. At this point, Benadryl does not faze me. So my mom was like, she needs something else because Benadryl, she's been taking it for so long. She's like, basically, I'm like immune to it. And they're like, well, we need to try Benadryl first. Like, this is hospital strength Benadryl. And my mom's like, okay, like, I'm trying to tell you, I know my child. I've been in the hospital with her plenty of times for allergic reactions, but, you know, whatever. So, Benadryl's not working. They did get my fever down, but my skin is still coming off. Like, my eyes are still red. I'm still very weak. I still can't stand. Like, my head is, like, throbbing. And they're like, okay, the Benadryl's not working. And my mom was like, I said that. So they gave me something else. I couldn't even tell you what they gave me. And so they're basically just trying to flush the medication out of my system. And they basically told me, you know, okay, this is, you have Stevens-Johnson syndrome. And I'm like, I have who? And I'm just like, okay, so what is it about this that's so rare that, like, no one, like, you guys have never seen it before, you guys were only taught it. And I'm just like, who was Stephen Johnson? And they're like, I don't know, he's dead. I'm like, okay, cool. So they were like, you know, whenever you go to like the doctor, you know, wherever, and they ask you what you're allergic to, you always tell them sulfa drugs. And I'm just like, okay, I don't know what that is, but sure. So I ended up going to a new doctor, and they were asking me, you know, what my allergies were. And I told them, well, I'm allergic to sulfa drugs. And then they were like, well, what does it do to you? And I'm like, Stevens-Johnson syndrome. That's what they told me to say. And the nurse's face just like dropped, and she just looked at me, and I'm like, did I say something wrong? Or why are you looking at me like that? So then the doctor comes in, he's reviewing everything that she said, and he reads over my allergies, and he was like, Stevens-Johnson syndrome, and then he looks at me, and he gets the same face. I'm like, why are you guys looking at me like that? Like, I mean, am I saying something, like, is that not what I was supposed to say? Was I supposed to say something different? Like, I'm genuinely confused. And he told me, he was like, to be honest, he was like, you should be dead. And he was like, most people who have this don't live. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he was like, you know, and honestly, if I was to take another drug that triggered this syndrome, I wouldn't live through it. Because I guess basically it like burns you from the inside out. So that's why my fever was so high. That's why my skin started coming off, was because I was literally burning from the inside out. And he was like, so you really just have to be careful about what you take. Make sure you always tell people, you know, this is what you're allergic to, like no matter where you go. Because he was like, the next time you're not going to live through it. And I was like, shit, I almost died. Like that, at that point when I was going through it, I was just like, I just knew I felt like shit. In my head, I wasn't thinking like this could kill me because I didn't know what it was. I just knew I was having an allergic reaction, but coming from someone who has an allergic reaction like damn near every day, it was just another allergic reaction to me. But hearing him say that, I'm like, okay, life is like too short to like be bullshitting basically. And even a few weeks ago, I was in the hospital. I had a really bad stomach virus. And when they asked me if I had any allergies, and I told them, and they literally slapped like this big red bracelet on my wrist that said allergy. They put like a big sign like outside of my door that said allergy. Like there was so many like things around the room that said that I had like this allergy. And I'm just like, okay, like this is like really serious. And now whenever I'm given medication, like I'm always like, okay, let me make sure that this is not going to kill me, because now that I know the next time that this happened, I'm not going to live. I need to avoid this type of medicine at all costs, which I don't know if sulfa drugs are just antibiotics, or I don't really know what they are. I probably should research it. I never have, but yeah. So I don't really know much about the syndrome or whatever, other than from what the doctor told me. I should probably research it a little bit more, but normally my mom just kind of handles all of that. Like, no, don't take that. No, don't take that. So yeah. Okay guys, that is it for this story time. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe before you leave. And I will see you guys tomorrow for Vlogmas Day 9.